Hey, hello everybody. How are we doing today? Another one of our Wednesday coffee sessions. Let me demonstrate. There we go. Coffee Wednesday. Just kicking off a little bit later than usual because normally we meet at 1 p.m. on a Wednesday, but I thought I might be cutting it a little bit close today, so I didn't want to risk being late. That's why I pushed it back to 1:30. And we are here to do what we do every Wednesday. And what is it that we do every Wednesday? We have our coffee break, and then we are attempting a set of MCQs from the sample of the SRA. And why are we doing this? Because we need to do as many MCQs as possible to prepare effectively for SQE1. So the crowd that usually attend these sessions and chats through these questions with me is the crowd that is preparing for SQE1. The next sitting for SQE1 is going to be January 26th. Do we have anybody watching us? If you're watching us live, let me know in the chat. If you are watching this on the replay, let me know in a comment under the video whether you're preparing for the January 26th exam or whether you're preparing for the July 26th exam. I don't know if you heard the news, but the SRA is debating putting more sittings. Apparently, they're introducing more sittings for SQE2 because there's quite a backlog of those. People who have passed SQE1 are now trying to pass SQE2, and there's quite a great deal of demand. So they are going to introduce some additional sittings of SQE1, of SQE2, and there is some debate as to whether we would like more SQE1 sittings. So I don't know. How do you guys feel about that? Would you like more opportunities for a sitting of SQE1? They were thinking, how could they spread them around the year? I don't know really. I think we have to be sort of mindful of the time that it takes to prepare effectively. I think having two sitting sessions, one in January, then one coming out in the summer, is a sensible breakdown. It does give the message that this is about like a kind of half year preparation at minimum that people need to put in. I'm concerned that if they input more sittings, people might feel the pressure to sit in a closer time frame before they're fully ready, and I'm not exactly sure this would be a benefit to them or not. So your opinion is very welcome on this. I would like some feedback on this idea, and then when I'm meeting with the SRA, I can kind of pass on this information to get a feel of how the community feels about additional sittings for SQE1. Now, if you are starting your preparation and you're thinking, how can I best organize myself and how can I best split the FLK across the time that I've got available, I have come up with a new tool for you guys. I have created a digital study planner which has preloaded FLK1 and FLK2, and it's got weighting according to level of difficulty for each topic. I've got the cat trying to get out. Yes. The cat's not very pleased to be stuck inside, is he? So we've got the digital study planner with the FLK1 and FLK2 and the weighting of the various sessions already preloaded. So what you can do is you go in there and you check your starting date. So you input your study date, and then you say whether you're going after FLK1 or FLK2, and then you check your sitting. Are you going for January or are you going for July? And then it will split the FLK in the time you've got available. So I've put the link in the chat for you guys. So if you follow this, you're going to get the link both to the physical study planner. That's a PDF that you can download. It was starting in August for the people who are preparing for the January exam. So that's already there as a PDF. You can print it out and have a look at it. But the digital one, you select your starting date and you select your examination date, and then it spreads everything out. So I'm testing this at the moment to see how the community feels about it. I'm kind of happy with the way that it works, at least on its initial beta version, and I'm looking forward to feedback. So if you guys use this, let me know what you think about it, whether you find it useful, whether you would like additional functionality or anything else that would enhance the value of the study planner, and then we can input that. Now, we've got a few people watching us live. Thank you very much. I wanted to say thanks for new channel members. Highlighted in the chat, we've got Amira, one of our new channel members. So it's been awesome to have an increase in the people who are financially supporting the channel. I'm doing the occasional office hour sitting for channel members. This normally happens kind of midday on Mondays, but otherwise the MCQ live stream, like our kind of coffee break MCQ sessions, are going to continue to take place on Wednesdays at kind of pretty much midday. So this is available to the entire community. So shall we attempt some MCQs? Let me find, there we go. Let me get to the top of my slides. Now, what we're doing every week is that we are going through the SRA samples. So why are we doing the SRA samples? Because you guys need something that is legit to prepare with. And since the SRA in its wisdom does not share with us past exam papers, the only thing that we've got that kind of approximates the exam is what they gave us in the sample exam papers. So in the sample sets of MCQs. So where are you going to find those? If you go to the SRA website, you can have a look in there, and you're going to have the opportunity to download FLK1 set of questions and FLK2 set of questions. They've got quite a lot. They're increasing, they're adding new ones all the time. So what I've done when I started this series of live streams, we started from the beginning, from question 1, from the FLK1 set, and we're working our way through it. I think at some point I'm going to switch to FLK2 because we've got now quite a few weeks that we're dealing with FLK1, so perhaps the time has come to kind of switch on to FLK2. But today, we're still dealing with the FLK1 package, and we are now at question 36. We left it at question 35 last week, so now we are at question 36. So what do you guys think? Shall we dive into the questions? Yes, we shall. So this is... I put a bit of cardamom in the coffee. You guys tried that? A bit of ground cardamom along with if you're having an instant coffee, just a dash of cardamom in there elevates the whole thing. Yes. Would you guys like some cooking advice? Do you know that I also have a cooking channel? Yes. I started as a YouTuber by running a cooking channel, like Greek food. So you should check it out. So maybe we can include the occasional tip for cooking tip alongside our questions. All right, question 36. A client objects to a decision which has been made to grant planning permission for the building of a supermarket on land near his home. The client has discovered that the chairman of the planning committee has made the decision, the person who did the decision, is a non-executive director of the supermarket chain in question. Which of the following best describes the status of the decision? Is it A, only where the facts suggest to the court that there was in fact a conflict of interest and that the decision was in fact biased, will the decision be held unlawful? Is it B, if the client can prove that a fair-minded and informed observer would naturally conclude that there was a conflict of interest, the decision will be held to be automatically biased and thus unlawful? Is it C, for the decision to breach the rule against bias and thus be held unlawful, the client must prove to the court on a balance of probabilities that the chairman was actually biased? Is it D, only if the facts suggest to the court that the fair-minded and informed observer would conclude that the decision was biased, will the decision be held unlawful? And is it E, if the facts suggest to the court that a fair-minded and informed observer would conclude that there was a real possibility of bias, the decision will be held unlawful? Okay, let's have a think. Which one do we reckon is the correct answer? Feel free to stick your opinion in the chat, or make a suggestion. If you're watching this on the replay, you can still make a suggestion and tell us why you think that's the correct one in the comments. Okay. Now, which one's the correct one? The correct answer to question 36 is E. If the facts suggest to the court that the fair-minded and informed observer would conclude that there was a real possibility of bias, the decision will be held unlawful. Okay, why is that? Why is this? We are thinking about the area of procedural impropriety in the field of judicial review. The specific rule that we're looking at is the rule against bias. Now, why do we care about bias? Because it is a key element of the principle of natural justice, that people who make decisions, they ought to make decisions in an upfront manner on the basis of publicized criteria and not to be swayed by considerations that are not part of this criteria. When somebody is biased, meaning that they've got a preconceived notion as to who should be awarded something or who should win or who should get the service or whatever it is, then they're not making their decision on the basis of the independent criteria. They're making their decisions on some sort of personal preference. So this is not cool. We've got a few cases that offer us legal tests for apparent bias, because this is what we're talking about here. Because you see, the guy who took the decision is a non-executive director of the supermarket chain in question. So there's a link. So there's an apparent bias. A relevant case here would be Porter versus McGill, is a question from 2001. The court said, the question is whether the fair-minded and informed observer, having considered the facts, would conclude that there was a real possibility of bias. Right. How do we apply this principle? You don't need to know the names of the cases for the SQE, obviously, but if the law comes from a case, it kind of helps you to kind of remember what's going on and to figure things out if you actually know a little bit about the case law. It's not very often that we mention cases in the context of this activity. But how do we apply this rule to the scenario? The chairman of the planning committee is a non-executive director of the supermarket chain, okay? He approves the application of the supermarket chain. The relationship creates a potential conflict of interest. The issue that we're wondering about is not whether the chairman was actually biased, but whether the appearance of bias would cause an objective observer to doubt impartiality. So we're focusing on a real possibility that the decision would be unlawful due to apparent bias. So that's why E, if the facts suggest to the court that a fair-minded and informed observer would conclude that there was a possibility of bias, the decision will be held unlawful. This is the closest option that we have to the test. Why are the others wrong? The first one is wrong because we don't require actual bias. B is wrong because it talks about automatic bias. We don't require automatic bias. C is wrong because it says proof of actual bias. Again, this is not necessary. And D is wrong because it's missing some wording. We need a real possibility. You just don't. Just saying it's biased is too vague. So we do need a real possibility. So if we take the test from Porter and McGill, the correct test here for figuring whether the decision is lawful or unlawful is whether a fair-minded and informed observer would think that there was a real possibility of bias. Okay. Now, I don't know how you guys feel about this. I find the question a bit difficult. It's because this is an area of the law that I'm less familiar with. Things that have to do with administrative law and the application of judicial review tend to be a little bit niche. If you're a recent law graduate, this might not be something that you've necessarily come across in the context of your studies. I mean, back in the day, we used to do administrative and public law, and we spent some time on it. I think these days people spend a lot less. So if you're a recent graduate, it could be that your knowledge of this is a bit weak, but there are some commonalities with other areas of the law. Because if we're talking about conflicts of interest and how these appear and what is the appropriate response to conflicts of interest, you might be thinking about the business law FLK when we're talking about directors and directors' duties and about conflicts that they get involved in. So the concept of conflict of interest is common and pervasive across the FLK. The particular application to judicial review is perhaps what is new here. Yeah, there we go. That's why we do these questions, to make sure that we've got an understanding of the totality of the FLK. As we've said in the past, what the SQE requires is not a particularly in-depth, but at least a consistent level of understanding across all areas of the FLK, because they have so many questions that they input into the exam that they do actually physically have the capacity to ask you a question about every single area of the FLK. So they will spread the questions that they cover pretty much everything. What is required of you is a consistent, albeit shallow, I have to say, but consistent understanding across all areas of the FLK. Now, sometimes you might get a question that you're a little bit more familiar with and you get lucky, sometimes a little bit less and you're unlucky. You don't need to get them all correct. You just need to get, more than half, I would say. The way that they count the scoring now, I think you could pretty much lose 40% of the questions and still scrape enough to pass. But don't quote me on this. The way the pass grades are dropping, I don't know what's going on anymore. Okay, are we ready for our next question? So move on to question 37. All right, here we are. A solicitor is advising a client on an employment contract in respect of a position that the client has been offered in a startup company. The client has a permanent position in an established company. The following day, the solicitor sits next to an acquaintance at a golf club dinner. Not classist at all, right? They could have been eating tea next to each other in the kebab shop, but nope, it's a golf club dinner. The new acquaintance tells the solicitor that he is concerned that the business he works for is bound for financial failure because its key customer is to be taken into receivership shortly. The new acquaintance then tells the solicitor the name of the business he works for. Much to the solicitor's surprise, it is, by coincidence, the startup company. Is the solicitor obligated to inform the client of the reported concerns about the financial prospects of the startup company? Your options are: no, because the information was obtained in the course of the solicitor's personal life and therefore does not impact on his professional obligations. B, no, because the duty of confidentiality overrides the duty of disclosure. C, no, because information obtained from clients must be kept confidential unless disclosure is required or permitted by law or the client consents. D, yes, because the information is material to the client's matter. E, yes, because the duty of disclosure overrides the duty of confidentiality. Okay. Right. Now, this will remind you of the duties of the solicitors, issues about professional privilege. It might also remind you of issues that have to do with disclosing confidential information that you obtained in the course of employment, where it might have market significant implications. So this is the field of insider information and insider trading and all of that stuff. So every time you get in a sort of question where it says, I overheard this and this is business significant, you'll be thinking about this. What is your status? Are you the solicitor? Are you the client? In which context is this information changing hands? And secondly, if you're getting the information from an insider in the business, were you to act on this information for private gain or publicize this information so other people act for private gain, would you be breaching rules that have to do with disclosure of financially relevant information? And would you be guilty of insider trading and stuff like that? Now, this particular question is less focused on the insider trading, on the kind of financial implication. It's more focused on the solicitor's obligations. So let's have a think. We've got a few people kind of watching us live right now. Thank you guys for turning up. What would you think is the correct answer? What would you do in this situation? Would you pass on the information to the client? Would you tell them, man, it's a bad idea for you to quit your job and join this startup at this moment because they're not doing very well? Would you be allowed to say this? I know you would be tempted to because you want to do well by your client, but are you technically allowed to say it? Ta-da! The answer is yes, you're allowed to say it because the information is material to the client's matter. We're thinking about the solicitor's duty of confidentiality and their duty of disclosure. Where are we going to find information about those? You should have a look at the SRA's Code of Conduct for Solicitors. In this situation, The man may be a solicitor, but they're not receiving the information in confidence from a client. They're not receiving this information in a professional context. The information was obtained socially, it was obtained informally. There is no duty of confidentiality owed to the acquaintance or to the acquaintance's employer, right? So the fact that the man is a solicitor doesn't really matter, right? Because this communication is not in the context of his work. Because it's not in the context of his work, there is no legal or ethical restriction preventing the solicitor from sharing the information with the client. So the client is about to leave their nice job for something exciting in the startup. They will be making a mistake because the fact pattern says this startup is about to go under because their key client is about to go under. So the solicitor would be doing their client a service by passing on this information. Let's see why the other questions are wrong. A is incorrect. Professional obligations apply whether the information is obtained personally or professionally, okay? So if we're not talking about the context in which you got the info, if you're acting in relation to your professional obligations. The important thing here is that it wasn't professional, okay? It could be that the solicitor obtained something in the context of their personal life, but they could still have obtained it from the client, okay, if they went for dinner with the client. So the A tries to mislead you as to where the problem is coming from. B is also incorrect. There is no confidentiality owed to the acquaintance, okay? So it's not a matter of whether confidentiality overrides disclosure and so on. There's just no relationship with the acquaintance. C is incorrect because it misstates the situation. The information did not come from a client. E is incorrect because it misdescribes the principle. The duty of disclosure does not override confidentiality generally. Here we have a different problem. So the correct answer is D. The information was not obtained in a professional setting. It was not obtained from the client. There is nothing to prevent the solicitor from passing on what would be useful information to their client. Yeah. So keep that in mind. Now, whether, if we're treating this as a solicitor obligations and ethics question, we're fine. And this is clearly what the question is about. If the question was about insider trading, then there might be additional considerations to look at. But if that was the gist of the question, then the potential answers would be different from what we've got now. Okay, so don't worry about this. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't think that insider trading, apart from some kind of highlight obligations on the behavior of solicitors, I don't think information, financial disclosure information, the restrictions and stuff are part of the FLK. So this is something that you're going to have to deal with in real life, but less likely to come up as an independent question for the SQE. All right, how are we doing so far? Are we doing all right? We seem to have spent our first 20 minutes here happily, so hopefully you guys are getting value out of this. If you are getting value and if you're enjoying the show, you have the opportunity to join dozens of other friends of yours who have joined the channel as paying members. So for the minuscule amount of less than this coffee, actually, hang on a second. This is an instant coffee. It probably doesn't cost that much. Let's say that I bought this coffee at Starbucks. Yes, you would pay more for a coffee at Starbucks than you would pay for a monthly subscription to this channel. So for $2.99 a month, you can become channel members. What are you going to get as a result? You're going to get, everybody gets these live streams, okay? So no issue there. But you're going to get the occasional office hour live streams that are special for me and my channel members. And this is the important bit, you're getting to see straight away all the videos that are queued up for release for the next few months. And I've got a lot of great videos coming up. I am doing a new series on the FLK when I'm reworking the material specifically on the SRA's specification, because I thought it might be a little bit tricky for people to follow what's happening as the content of my videos and kind of transpose this against the SRA specification for the FLK. I mean, they were roughly built on the FLK anyway, but I thought it might be useful for people to make this more explicit. So I'm redoing a new set of videos, updated for the exams in 2026, that I'm taking the SRA specification as a table of contents. And I'm actually dealing with every issue in the specification one by one in that correct order. So that way, you guys are getting exactly what you need, and you can use those videos as an introduction to the study of the FLK if you're new to your preparation, or if you're getting closer to the exam, you can use these videos for a revision and be secure in the knowledge that you're only listening to the stuff that are directly applicable and directly relevant to the FLK. So all of these videos are coming out. I'm finishing one now on the English legal system that has got and they've all got funny visuals that they start with. They've all got a story that they're built around, right? So that's also, I think, a funny thing to watch. So everybody will get those videos eventually, but if you're in a hurry and you want to accelerate your preparation, you can join the channel as paid members and you can see all the videos. Once again, thank you to all the people who have joined us recently and they're supporting this effort. Are we ready for our next question? Let's move on to question 38. Oops, here we go. And by the way, if you guys are enjoying this and you find this valuable, hit the like button. So then YouTube knows as well that you guys are having a good time and doesn't forget to show you the notification next time that our live stream is on, right? So a like and a share always kind of helps YouTube understand that people are having a good time. Right, now, question 38. A man is employed by a roofing company to repair roofs. Great, because if he was employed by a roofing company to kind of wrap kebabs, that would be strange. Now, the role requires him to wear special gloves in order to protect his hands when he handles roof tiles. Whilst standing on some scaffolding negligently erected by the roofing company, he falls off, suffers serious injury to his head, and brings a claim. He carelessly failed to wear the gloves at the time. Which of the following best describes whether the company can successfully claim roofer? Now, you guys remember what contributory negligence is? It is a concept in tort, and the way this works is that it says if somebody has suffered loss, somebody has been the victim of a tort, then they can have their damages, they can have their compensation reduced if they also contributed to the damage that they suffered due to their own actions. So we acknowledge that a tort has been committed and a person has suffered loss as a result, but if the loss that they suffered has been augmented, has been made worse by their own actions, then that counts as contributory negligence. Therefore, it does not completely absolve the person who's responsible for the tort, but it reduces the amount of money that they can collect as remedies, meaning that they will not be compensated for the totality of the loss that they're suffering. This is what contributory negligence is about. Our possible options. So, which of the following best describes whether the company can successfully claim contributory negligence on the part of the roofer? A. The company cannot claim contributory negligence because the roofer's carelessness did not cause or contribute to the injury. B. The company cannot claim contributory negligence because the roofer did not owe the company a duty of care. C. The company can claim contributory negligence because the roofer's carelessness caused or contributed to his injury. D. The company can claim contributory negligence because the roofer's carelessness materially increased the risk of injury. Or is it E? The company can claim contributory negligence because the roofer owed the company a duty of care. Okay. Now, which one do you think is the correct answer? Now, me personally, I find this a little easier to handle than some of our previous questions, maybe because the law of tort is a little bit more familiar. It's like a first-year subject. In most institutions, it might be something that you've got more direct relation with in the context of your work as well. So I find the FLK tort a little bit easier. I've got quite a few nice videos about it. Of a variety of lengths, in fact. So if you guys want like a quick update to the law of tort, then we've got some options available for you. Right. What is the correct answer here? The correct answer is A. The company cannot claim contributory negligence because the roofer's carelessness did not cause or contribute to the injury. Okay? So, in fact, the roofer did not respect his instructions. He did not wear the protective equipment. However, the protective equipment was for a different aspect of the work. And he suffered an accident by falling off the scaffolding because the scaffolding was not correctly erected. It has nothing to do with whether he was wearing gloves or not. Now, if the company wanted to make the argument that if he had gloves, he would have a better grip, therefore he wouldn't have fallen, that would be something else. But this is not what the fact pattern is about. The fact pattern says very clearly that the gloves were there to protect him from cutting himself when he's handling the tiles, not he is on site moving back and forth or climbing the scaffolding or whatever. Yeah. Now, A is correct. Why are the others incorrect? B says that the company cannot claim contributory negligence because the roofer did not owe the company a duty of care. It's not the company that got injured, it's the roofer, okay? So it's the company that owes the roofer a duty of care, not the other way around. C says the company can claim contributory negligence because the roofer's carelessness caused or contributed to the injury. Well, it didn't, okay? So this is factually wrong. C, the company can claim contributory negligence because the roofer's carelessness caused or contributed to the injury. No. D, the company can claim contributory negligence because the roofer's carelessness materially increased the risk of injury. No, it didn't, okay? So all these are wrong on the facts. E, the company can claim contributory negligence because the roofer owed the company a duty of care. No, the roofer did not owe the company a duty of care, right? The company that owes the roofer. So apparently, not apparently, it's clear. The appropriate conclusion here is that the company owes the roofer a duty of care. The company breached this duty of care by not erecting the scaffolding as it should have been. This led to injury. Whether the roofer was wearing the gloves or not is unrelated to the circumstances of the injury. Therefore, it cannot constitute contributory negligence. So good news for the roofer. Yeah. Moving on to our next question. How are we doing? How are we doing so far? We're getting more people that are joining to watch us live, which is awesome. Is this like a better time for you guys? Let me know in the chat or in the comments under this video, because I thought if I normally schedule these sessions at 1 a.m., I thought it coincides with people's coffee break or lunch break. But if I've got more people joining in at 2 and you would like these sessions to start at 2 p.m., then let me know and I can move them. It doesn't make any difference to me. I'm trying to be live at the time that is most useful for the community. So if you guys prefer 2 o'clock, let me know. Maybe I'm gonna run a poll we should do that on the community tab in the YouTube channel. I'm gonna run a poll as to whether you guys prefer these sessions to be at 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. on a Wednesday, and then we can go with that. Alrighty, so now we have made our way down to question 39. A solicitor acts for a client who is raising finance secured against his home to fund his new business. The solicitor will be providing advice and preparing all the necessary documentation in connection with the mortgage. The client asks the solicitor to explain the key differences between a repayment mortgage and an endowment mortgage. Neither the solicitor nor his firm is authorized by the Financial Conduct Authority to carry on regulated activity. Can the solicitor give the explanation requested about the types of mortgages? The possible answers are A, yes, because such advice is a necessary part of the provision of his legal services. B, yes, because he is subject to the solicitor's financial services rules and therefore falls within an exemption from the Financial Services and Markets Act of 2000. C, yes, because the provision of generic advice is outside the scope of the Financial Services and Markets Act. D, no, because such advice does not fall within an exemption from the Financial Services and Markets Act. E, no, because he is not authorized by the Financial Conduct Authority to give advice in respect of either type of mortgage. Okay. What do we think is the answer here? What's the client actually asking? The client is asking an explanation of the difference between a repayment mortgage and an endowment mortgage. You see, the client is not asking the solicitor to help him choose between one type and the other. He just doesn't know what it is. Yeah? So explaining, what you need to consider is, does explaining something count as giving advice? And if that advice is a regulated activity, then you cannot do it if you're not properly authorized, or not. The correct answer here is C. Yes, the solicitor can provide the information, because the provision of generic advice is outside the scope of the Financial Services and Markets Act of 2000. Under this act, only regulated activities require authorization by the Financial Conduct Authority. Giving advice on regulated mortgage contracts can be a regulated activity, but only if the advice is specific and relates to the merits of entering into a particular regulated mortgage. In the case that we got here, the solicitor is not recommending any particular product. He's not recommending any particular lender, right? The client merely asks for an explanation of the difference between two generic mortgage types, what's repayment, what's endowment. That type of generic explanation or factual information will not be regarded regulated advice under the Financial Services and Markets Act, and it falls outside the scope of Financial Conduct Authority regulation. That's why the other options are wrong. A is incorrect. The advice is connected to the legal work, but this isn't really, you're not allowed to offer financial advice if you're offering legal work, and the financial advice cannot be a sideline because it needs to be separately regulated by the FCA. So A is wrong. B is incorrect as well. The scope rules exemption is for activities incidental. They need the exemption here. This is not the regulated, field at all. D is incorrect. There is no breach because generic explanations do not fall under the regulation. E is incorrect. FCA authorization is unnecessary. So here is simply explaining what it is. To be honest with you guys, if the rules were so tight that you couldn't even explain the differences of things or explain the nature of the law or the nature of the regulatory regime without needing authorization, then half my videos here would be banned because they would be, I don't have regulation from the Financial Conduct Authority. I mean, I've got an entire video that's like a very 4-hour video that explains opportunities for investment in the UK for foreign investors and what are the sort of legal and regulatory issues that they need to consider when they're investing in the UK. This is just explaining the regulatory regime and is offering generic advice and explanation. It is not something that requires to be authorized. Now, if somebody came to me and said, Dr. Yannis, on the basis of that video, which shares would you recommend I purchase? Then I would be providing investment advice. And that is something that I would need to be registered with the FCA and regulated for, right? So here, the solicitor is just explaining something that the client does not know. They're not offering advice. Therefore, they don't need to be regulated. Okay, all right. How are we doing so far? Yes, we passed the halfway point in the hour. So you guys hopefully are still okay. Do you find the ads disruptive? For those of you that don't have YouTube Premium, which I like, but I don't recommend because it's too expensive. Yes. So if our overlords at YouTube are listening to this, your product's too expensive. Now, anything that costs more than Netflix is too expensive. And, we all watch Netflix all day long, or, maybe I do, maybe not everybody. Maybe you guys are too busy preparing for the SQE and you don't have all the time to watch Netflix, but I do. So I just refuse to pay for anything if it's more expensive than Netflix. So I would love to have YouTube Premium all the time, but I think it's too much, so I come in and out. If you have YouTube Premium, you can watch this stuff here without any interruption. If you don't have YouTube Premium, then the live stream is going to cut at some point and display ads. So the question was, do you find the ads annoying? Because I cannot stop them, but I got the concern that when the ads are playing and interrupts people, then people kind of lose interest and kind of move out and do something else. But if an ad starts playing, stay with me. 50 seconds later, you're gonna see me coming back on, right? And if you're concerned you missed anything on those 15 seconds of absolute value, you can watch it again on the replay. Right, next question 40. This is a public law question. Question 40. The UK government has introduced a parliamentary bill to repeal a UK statute. The government is able to command the majority in the House of Commons, but the bill is opposed in the Lords. The Parliaments Act of 1911 and 1949 are invoked in order to pass the bill into law. What further steps are required for the bill to become law? A. The bill will require approval in the House of Commons and to receive royal assent. B. The bill will require approval in the House of Commons and the House of Lords to receive royal assent. C. The bill will require approval in the House of Commons and a UK referendum. Well, that didn't go well last time. D. The bill will require approval in the House of Commons and the House of Lords and in a UK referendum to receive royal assent. Damn. E. The bill will require approval in the House of Commons, the House of Lords, and in a UK referendum. What? Okay. What do you guys think? How's your knowledge of constitutional law? Administrative, public, constitutional, EU law, and human rights and anti-discrimination legislation are all part of the FLK. Of course, they're not examined at the level of the detail that one you would come across if they were doing like a kind of full-scale law degree. Having said that, I forgot that we hardly teach any of that stuff in the law degree anymore, but stay with me. You require a sort of base understanding of what happens in public, administrative, constitutional, EU, and human rights, right, as part of the FLK. So you do need to know some of this stuff. Okay, what is our answer here? Should it be A, B, C, D, or E? Vote now or vote later in the comments. The correct answer is A. The bill will require approval in the House of Commons and to receive royal assent. Why? Because the Parliaments Act of 2011 and 2049 give the Lords the power to block legislation, but this power is not infinite. So these acts enable certain bills to become law without the consent of the Lords, providing that specific procedural requirements are met. Meaning that if the Commons is dead keen of passing some legislation, then they can do it without needing the assent of the Lords, and the House of Lords can at best delay the decision or send it back for consideration, but they cannot endlessly veto a bill. So here, once the bill goes back to the Commons can follow the specific procedure embodied in those acts to actually pass it and progress it for royal assent without the consent of the Lords. So B is wrong, because the whole point of invoking the Parliaments Act is to bypass approval from the Lords, right? And C, D, and E are wrong, because referenda, thank Christ for that, are not a key feature of British parliamentary democracy. Yes. So yeah, I'm not considering considering how the last one went. You're not gonna find many people on either side of the debate that are particularly keen on a referendum. Okay, what do we have next? Next, we have our last question, which is question 41. Let's see what's happening here. Oh, yeah, I like this one. Yes. A man and a woman who have never met each other are at a swimming pool. Yes, this is not a rom-com. This is an SQE SRA produced question. The man had a lesson from a qualified instructor, but due to the negligence of the instructor, the man struggled in the deep end of the pool and drowned. The woman saw the entire incident, and instead of TikToking it or Instagramming it like a normal person, she developed a traumatic neurosis. That means she went nuts. Can the woman recover damages against the instructor for the traumatic neurosis? Damn. Yes. You see, people are accusing the younger generations of being snowflakes. Maybe I shouldn't joke. Maybe this is a serious matter. I went last weekend to Hampstead Heath, and I was looking at the pools there, and there are kind of some swimming areas, and I was thinking exactly the same. This doesn't look like the sort of swimming experience one would survive. Okay, what are our options? Can the woman recover damages against the instructor? A, yes, because the instructor breached the duty of care he owed to the man, and his negligence caused the woman's loss. B, yes, because the instructor breached the duty of care which he owed to the woman, and his negligence caused her loss. C, yes, because the woman is suffering from a medically recognized condition. D, no, because the instructor did not owe the woman a duty of care. E, no, because the woman's loss is too remote. What do we think is the correct answer here? The correct answer here is D, no, because the instructor did not owe the woman a duty of care. Right. What are we thinking about here? We're thinking psychiatric injury, like nervous shock arising in negligence. But we're not only talking about the primary victim having suffered a mental problem as a result of suffering the tort. We're talking about a bystander, a secondary visit, and a secondary victim, and the circumstances in which secondary victims can recover damages. Now, a person can only recover for psychiatric injury if they suffer a recognized psychiatric illness, meaning not just be upset about it, it needs to be something medical, and the defendant owed them a duty of care to avoid causing such injury. So there are two categories of victims here. One's a primary victim, the one directly involved in the accident, and the second is a secondary victim, witnesses or bystanders who suffer psychiatric injury as a result of that. And the law on secondary victims can be found in specific cases. The best known one is Alcock versus Chief Constable of South Yorkshire Police. It's a case from 1992. For a secondary victim to recover, they must show that they had a close tie of love and affection with the primary victim, proximity in time and space to the incident or its immediate aftermath, and the psychiatric injury was caused by direct perception of the event or its aftermath. It must be reasonably foreseeable that a person of ordinary fortitude would suffer such injury. Okay. Now, let's go through the options. Yes, because the instructor breached the duty of care he owed to the man and his negligence caused the woman's loss. Well, no, because that is talking about the duty owed to the man, not the duty owed to external parties. B says, yes, because the instructor breached the duty of care which he owed to the woman and his negligence caused her loss. He did not owe a duty of care to the woman's secondary victim. So that's not right either. C, yes, because the woman is suffering a medically recognized condition. Okay, so if she had arthritis, could she argue for that as well? It's not as simple as that, okay? So we need the psychiatric illness and the breach of the duty of care. E is also wrong. The issue is not remoteness here, is the existence of the duty. Now, the correct answer by elimination is D, that the instructor did not owe the woman a duty of care. But you know what? I don't like the question. And maybe we should tell the SRA about this. This is the perfect example of MCQs going off the track and putting you in the difficult position of choosing the best available answer, but it could be that all the answers are slightly wrong. The law as it stands for secondary victims requires the obligation to be to the primary victim, not the secondary victim. So the bystander, according to Alcock, for instance, they need to have the close tie, the proximity in time and space, the direct perception, and there needs to be reasonable foreseeability that injury would occur. It's not a requirement from Alcock that the duty of care is owed to the passerby. So, in fact, the SRA is giving us D as the correct answer for question 41, but I think all the possible answers are wrong. We can be unhappy about it. And you can be unhappy with the SRA, not with me, because I'm not the one who wrote the question. Yeah? Could any others be any better? Let's have another look at them. The instructor breeds the duty care of, well, could we argue that A is a better option here? The instructor breeds the duty of care to the man, and his negligence caused the woman's loss. It's a few steps removed from a complete answer, but to be honest with you guys, I think it comes closer as a correct answer than the one that is indicated by the SRA, which is option D. So perhaps we can come back to this and kind of debate it in the future again, but this is something that you need to be prepared for. People are writing these questions. They don't always do a perfect job. So it could be that there's something in the scenario that doesn't make sense. It could be that there's something in the possible answers that doesn't make sense. It could be that more than one of the possible answers seems correct, and then you have a difficult task of sort of guessing which one of the kind of slightly correct answers is the one to choose. Or you could be in a situation like this one where none of them actually seem to match precisely what's going on, or they all seem to be a little bit off, and you need to select the one that is less off than the others. I cannot argue with this. I think I would have gone for A because of the rules as they stand to bystanders. She wouldn't win though, because you see that's what the problem is, because it says yes. She's not going to recover damages because she doesn't have a close tie of love and affection. So you don't, the criteria aren't that you watch a traumatizing event and then you need to have actually a link to the people in the traumatizing event. And this is what's missing here. So I don't know what to tell you, but you need to be prepared for this to happen to you. When this happens to you, what do you do? There's a solution. Do not linger. Just pick one and move on. Remember that you don't have the time to spend ages thinking about a question or to kind of high-fiving yourself that you caught a question with a mistake and then you can tell the examiners how they suck. You do not have the time to do this. So when you find a question that is ambiguous like this one, or you find a question where all the potential answers appear to be wrong somehow, you still have to make a choice. So then the task becomes quickly make a choice, note it, move on, focus on the other questions. And then it is a bit of matter of luck, perhaps, whether you kind of hit the correct one that the SRA thought is the correct one or not, but at least you haven't lost time. And I think that's an important thing to remember. This isn't real life. Actually, this is very much real life, especially if you paid the fee. That's what I mean. The questions are not real life. So these are not the real scenarios that one has to address in the context of their work. They're artificial. They're generated. And as generated artificial scenarios, they might carry mistakes. And we need to be prepared for this. Our task is to sift through all those questions in less than 2 minutes per question. So don't get a potentially wrong question or wrong potential set of answers derail you and lose your time. Because in the 5 minutes that you're going to spend trying to work this out, you've lost the time that you have devoted to other questions. And if you run out of time without answering questions, then you've lost a lot more than attempting, even guessing, and moving on. So, guys, thank you very much for turning up today for our live stream. It was awesome to see you. It was awesome to have a lot of people watching the show live. Remember to hit the thumbs up and share it with a friend if you think they're going to benefit from these. Next week, we're taking a break because it's generally considered to be a reading week at the university. So we're also taking like a relaxation week here on the channel. And I'll see you guys the week after, the first week of November. Have a great break, and I'll be with you soon.